How do I prepare for a public speaking event? Well, the first two key words that come to mind for public speakers are ready and relaxed. And the truth of the matter is, the ready is more or less within our control. The relaxed can feel a lot more challenging, but these two things go together. So that's why it is so important to look at preparation. I trained as an actor, and so as a speaker and public speaking coach, I really draw on a lot of theatrical techniques to find out how to help myself and my clients show up for successful communication and presentation. The things that make a successful presenter, whether playing the role or as yourself, are pretty universal. I'm going to go over 3 aspects of presentation. The first, preparing your mind. The second, preparing your body. And the third, preparing your text. And that could be spontaneous speech or written down text that you need to rehearse quite specifically. Preparing your mind. Now let's go back into the distant past, at the very beginning of my theatrical career, when I was really trying things out, having been trained in a number of techniques. I had this toolbox and I had to just see what worked for every situation. So I'll show you what I used to do in the darkness backstage. Okay, so this would be me backstage. I'd crouch in a corner. This was for quite a heavy role, and I would go through all of the things that I thought would really spark my emotions. You know, I'd be drawing on everything. My pet dying when I was a child, the last boyfriend I had who created this tremendous sense of longing in me and then inexplicably left, and so on and so forth, because I did tend to get these rather tragic, dramatic roles, and I'd be going, okay, remember, you know, doing the breathing and all of those kinds of things. So there were definitely some problems with this preparation. Part of it is, it's not great to do that right before you go on stage. Preparation for public speaking has to be a better thought out process, rather than trying to trigger emotions last minute. In other words, longer preparation, and then right beforehand, what you really want to do are some more calming techniques, particularly for public speaking. So, what should I have been doing instead? Well, you may ask. Honestly, what I was trying to do there was to find my why. And your why is really important, but you can't leave it to the last minute. One of the things that happens a lot with people who are really negatively anticipating their public speaking moments is that they procrastinate, and there's a lot of self-questioning that goes on around, why would anyone want to hear me speak? Why have I been chosen? I'm not really the person who should be here. And then all the other things that go on with being afraid of not doing a good job. Am I worthy to stand in the limelight? And so on and so forth. I hate the sound of my own voice, my gosh. I could go on and on and on. It's quite a litany, isn't it? So then people procrastinate when it comes to really taking the time to own and embrace what they're doing. So as an actor, what I really needed to do was do a lot of that preparation earlier. And then when I was going to go on stage, have just a touchstone to remind me of what the whys of that character were, and what did that character want to achieve in the positive. And sometimes you can, as an actor, set that up so that if your character is going to be disappointed, well, the character doesn't know that yet. So you want to set yourself up to really be hopeful, so that when you as the character don't get what you want, you'll really feel the weight of that. Okay, so that's for acting. But for public speakers, knowing your why ahead of time, taking on board that the audience want to have a good experience. You need to find a way to get excited about giving them a good experience. Now, how do you do that? I'm going to look at that now. The mindset issue is wide and deep. There are so many things that we can do. One of those things is this. So come along with me once more into my world of relaxation. So you kind of have to get on your own psychiatrist's couch, the psychiatrist's couch of SJ. That's quite a good preparation for articulation, in fact. And here I am. What do I need to prepare? What is going to help me? Am I painting stories in my head about my failure? Am I spending a lot of time envisioning me failing on stage? Or am I spending time envisioning my success? Tapping into my why, and if there is no why, you really need to reconsider whether you should be doing the speaking engagement. And if the speaking engagement is required for the role you're in, and you are delivering a message that's totally inauthentic to you and you don't believe in and you feel does not have integrity, wow, that's a really hard one, and you need to reconsider whether you should be in that role. So that's my advice around that. What's going to relax you? Taking the time to work with ourselves is not to be underestimated. It's really important. You are your instrument, and I'm going to be getting into that in a moment when it comes to the body. So you really have to answer your questions, your own questions that you have about why you're doing what you're doing. Write it down, lay it out there, and commit, and then prepare. I am standing between two doorways. Here we could call this the doorway of preparation and success, and here this might be the doorway of procrastination and really not feeling good about the performance afterwards. What's next? We've talked about mindset, and anxiety with public speaking definitely resides in our minds and then is manifest in our bodies in all the ways that we experience nerves, our voice shutting down, dry throat, not coming out with the words, having these painful long pauses. I've been there, we all have. So how do you prepare your body? In the most mundane way, tremendous hydration. And like everything else, hydration begins at home. And what that means is, if you're someone who just never drinks enough water, it's not going to get a lot better right before your performance. If you're someone who hates drinking water, find another solution. Drink a herbal iced tea, but really find a way to get liquids into you. That means also not partaking in alcohol, cannabis, or cigarettes the day before your presentation. And if you're on a plane before your presentation, you're going to have to hydrate even more. Our vocal cords need that hydration, and your voice is your central performance instrument. When it comes to public speaking, even if you're mic'd, it is also about expression and ease in your voice. So let's care for our voices. The other physical, mundane preparation that we need to do is think about when to eat. Don't eat right before the public speaking engagement. I normally, when I'm going to be performing on stage, and it's a very whole physical experience, only eat 2 hours before, and then maybe have a small snack much closer to the time if I'm really losing energy. That's the best way to handle eating, and continuing to hydrate, but not drinking so much that you'll need to go to the loo when you're speaking. So there's an awful lot for us to think about on the most practical level. The other aspect is your voice. If you don't know how to use your breath for public speaking, and you are anxious about how your voice sounds, work with a coach. Really work with someone who understands voice and the holistic way in which bringing your voice out is not just about the very technical, but understands how using the technical can also help you feel more confident, because that's what this is about. I have brought you here to my impromptu study to talk about preparing text and speech, whether spontaneous or otherwise. Now, I have always envied the 19th century gentleman who in my mind's eye always had a study or a library to retreat to so that he could do his work uninterrupted while his wife and servants ran the household. You need to set out that time for yourself, whether you're a man or woman. These days it can be really hard to set aside the time to prepare. Setting aside rehearsal time is another way to really respect the experience and make sure you're ready, taking ownership. I'm going to spend X amount of time going through an improvisation of my spontaneous speech or the written speech itself, whatever you're working on. Having a coach who can guide you, support you, encourage you, and really point out where you're effective and where you're not takes the burden off of yourself for having to watch yourself all the time and try and come up with something by yourself. So I really encourage you to get support and to set aside time to practice the text. Depending on what it is, I would say a minimum of 2 weeks preparation regularly. That means almost every day you're setting aside some time to work on it. Being unprepared is one of the ways we just derail ourselves. If you'd like to know more, please check out my last video, Public Speaking Myths Busted, in which I look at 5 very common misconceptions, challenge them, and come up with remedies. Here's to unlocking your performance power.